At 11:22 p.m., the last passenger train pulls out of the station. The platform lights dim. The public exits. But 200 meters down the line, past the signal gantries and the concrete buffer stops, something else is already moving. The freight depot does not wait for morning. It never has. A freight railway depot is not a single place. It is a layered system. Tracks, sidings, loading docks, marshalling yards, maintenance pits, fuel stations, control rooms. Each layer operates on its own schedule. Each layer depends on every other layer, performing exactly on time. When they align, cargo moves silently across a country. The day shift ends at 6 p.m. By 7, the night team has signed on. 16 workers, 3 supervisors, 1 yard controller who will not leave his post until the handover at 6 a.m. He has done this for 11 years. He knows every sound this yard makes. The hiss of brakes, the clang of couplers, the silence that means something is wrong. Before a single wagon moves, documentation must move first. Every freight shipment carries a consignment note. Weight, contents, origin, destination, hazardous materials, classification, if applicable. That information travels ahead of the cargo, into the control system, into the manifest, into the signals themselves. The train does not move until the paperwork says it can. The marshalling yard is where trains are built, not assembled in a factory, built from pieces, here, tonight. A locomotive from one siding, 12 wagons from another. A refrigerated car added at the last junction. A flatbed wagon carrying construction steel inserted third from the front. The yardmaster reads the build sheet. The shunter moves. Coupling a freight wagon is a physical act. It requires precision, timing, and the willingness to stand between 2 moving masses of steel. The shunter guides the locomotive with hand signals. Slower. Hold. Slow again. The coupler engages with a sound that resonates across the whole yard. 1 more wagon added to tonight's consist. Not all freight is equal. Standard dry bulk, liquid tankers, refrigerated containers, oversized loads on specialized flatbeds, hazardous materials, acids, flammable gases, pressurized chemicals, each requiring segregated placement within the consist. The yardmaster knows which wagons cannot travel adjacent. The manifest enforces it. The system does not allow exceptions. The brake test happens before every departure, every wagon, every connection. A technician walks the consist from end to end, listening, pulling, checking each brake shoe and hose coupling. It takes 22 minutes for a 40-wagon train. No shortcut, no skip, no assumption. The protocol exists because a failed brake on a loaded freight train has consequences that extend far beyond the depot. Inside the locomotive, a different kind of preparation is underway. The driver arrives 40 minutes before departure. Systems check, brake pressure, fuel level, event recorder status. The cab is compact, instruments clustered within arm's reach, the forward window framing a corridor of tracks that stretches into the dark ahead. Tonight's route, 430 kilometers. 1 stop for crew change. The signal clears at 23:47, a green aspect, 2 kilometers ahead. The driver releases the brake, increases throttle gradually. The locomotive takes the weight. 40 wagons, 820 tons. The motion begins so slowly, it seems like nothing has changed. Then the depot falls behind, and the system is in transit. The depot does not pause when a train departs. 3 more consists are scheduled for tonight. 1 arriving, 2 being built. The yard controller adjusts signal settings. The shunter moves to the next assignment. The paperwork for the next train is already on the desk. This is not urgency. It is rhythm. A continuous rhythm running through the night. Loading is not simply placing things on a wagon. Weight distribution across axles must stay within tolerance. Center of gravity matters on curves. Timber must be chalked and lashed. Steel coils must be cradle secured. Bulk grain hoppers must be sealed. Each load type has its own binding standard. The loader knows them by memory. He has loaded this type of flatbed wagon 900 times. Tonight, one of the arriving trains is carrying automotive parts, sealed metal crates, precision tolerances. They left a factory in one city 36 hours ago. They are due at an assembly plant in another city by 6 a.m. The supply chain window is 90 minutes. If the train arrives late, a production line pauses. The depot does not know this. The depot does its job the same regardless. The refrigerated car presents a different challenge. Its cargo, perishable food, requires a constant internal temperature. The refrigeration unit runs off a diesel generator built into the wagon. Fuel levels are checked on arrival. If the unit fails during transit, the entire load may be lost. A technician connects a diagnostic terminal. Checks: temperature log, fuel reserve, door seal integrity. 3 minutes. Cleared. Below the depot, infrastructure runs unseen. Signal cable ducts, drainage channels, earthing networks. The rails themselves are bonded to a continuous electrical return path. Every signal, every track circuit, every set of points depends on the integrity of this underground grid. One broken bond can drop a signal to red and stop a train 3 kilometers away. Maintenance never waits for a failure to appear. The points, or switches, are the joints of the yard. They redirect wagons from one track to another. A yard this size has over 60 sets of points, each one electrically operated, each one monitored. At least once per 12-hour shift, every set is manually walked. The points inspector checks for debris, for wear, for contamination. A single piece of ballast in the blade gap can prevent a point from closing fully. And an incomplete movement is a risk. Fuel is a logistics problem in itself. The freight locomotives are refueled between runs, sometimes mid-consist, with wagons already coupled. The fuel point is positioned at the eastern end of the yard. A tanker delivers by day. The underground reservoir holds enough for 48 hours. The night team draws from it. Fueling takes 7 minutes per locomotive. During those 7 minutes, the locomotive does not move. The schedule accounts for it. Exactly. At 1:15 a.m., an incoming train is diverted. Track maintenance on the main approach. The train is rerouted to the secondary arrival road. It adds 9 minutes to the approach. The yard controller recalculates. He moves a shunting locomotive from one assignment to another. He notifies the loading team. He adjusts the departure slot for the outbound consist. He does not raise his voice. He does not appear stressed. He adjusts. That is his function. The maintenance pits occupy a separate building at the south end of the depot. 3 inspection roads, each with a below-rail walkway, allowing technicians to move under a standing wagon. The pits are illuminated at all times. 2 mechanics work the night shift here. They handle what breaks or what shows early signs of breaking. A wagon that enters the pit at 2 a.m. must be cleared and back in service by 5. Wheel wear is measured, not assumed. A wheel flange that is worn beyond tolerance changes the risk profile of every curve the wagon will take. The technician runs a profile gauge across the tread. The reading goes into a maintenance log. If it's marginal, the wagon is flagged. If it's over, the wagon is pulled from service. There is no discussion. The gauge does not negotiate. The control room connects the depot to the wider network. It receives signal data from the approach lines. It communicates with the National Traffic Management Center. It monitors the progress of every outbound train for the first 30 kilometers. After that, responsibility transfers to the regional signal boxes. The handover is digital, automatic, logged. But the yard controller still watches the board until the last signal on his territory returns to normal. Old habit. Good habit. At 2:40 a.m., the yard grows briefly quiet. No departures scheduled for the next 40 minutes. One arrival pending. One consist still under construction. The shunters take a break in the crew room. Hot drinks. A few minutes of seated stillness in a room that smells of diesel and jacket lining. They do not talk much. The work has its own language. Gesture, radio code, physical routine. Words are almost unnecessary by this hour. Security operates in the background here. Not the theatrical security of an airport. Functional security. Perimeter fencing. CCTV. Access logs. Freight theft is a real operational risk. An unsecured wagon containing electronics can be a significant financial loss and a chain of custody failure with downstream consequences in insurance, legal liability, and client trust. The security patrol walks the perimeter every 90 minutes. Known rhythm. Deliberate consistency. Hazardous materials wagons have their own designated area. It is marked with orange diamond placards. It is distanced from the main facility. It has its own fire suppression access road. A chemical release here would trigger a cascade of protocols involving the depot, the regional emergency services, and the National Hazmat Authority. That cascade has been rehearsed, documented, reviewed. Tonight, the hazardous wagons sit still. The protocols remain in the filing cabinet. But they are ready. At 3:18 a.m., the temperature drops 3 degrees. In the open yard, this matters. Rail steel contracts in cold. Track geometry shifts measurably. Points that functioned correctly at 15 degrees require more electrical force to move at 4. The system anticipates this. Heaters embedded in point machines activate automatically. A small detail, a detail that prevents delay, a detail that no passenger ever knows about. The weighbridge sits at the exit of the depot. Every outbound wagon passes over it. Not just for billing, though weight-based freight charges require accuracy. For safety. A wagon loaded heavier than declared stresses axles, affects braking distance, strains the track structure. The weighbridge data goes into the manifest. If the measured weight deviates significantly from the declared weight, the consist is held. The load is investigated. Tonight, all weights are within tolerance. Somewhere beyond the depot, the first train of the night is now passing through sleeping towns. Its headlight sweeps across level crossing barriers, through the edges of industrial estates, along embankments that no one designed to be seen. The driver is alone in the cab. The radio crackles occasionally. The track ahead looks the same as it did an hour ago. The cargo behind him will be unloaded before most people wake up. Back at the depot, the second outbound consist is nearly ready. 27 wagons. Mixed freight. The last 3 wagons, carrying flat-packed furniture, were delayed from an afternoon warehouse offload. They arrived 40 minutes late. The consist build was adjusted. The departure time shifted by 32 minutes, a small ripple. Contained. The system absorbed the delay without drama. That is what a well-run depot does. Communications in a freight depot operate on multiple frequencies. Train radio, shunting radio, operations phone, emergency line. Each has a distinct protocol, a distinct register. You do not use shunting radio to call an emergency. You do not use the operations phone during active shunting. The discipline is not bureaucratic. It exists because in a noisy, dark yard with multiple operations running simultaneously, a misheard instruction can have immediate physical consequences. The depot has a water system for fire suppression, for washing. Underground pipes running between every building and every loading dock. It is tested quarterly. The pressure readings are logged. A hydrant that produces less than rated flow pressure is flagged for repair before the next test. Most people would not notice the hydrant. It is painted red. It sits in the grass between two sidings. It has never been used in an emergency. The plan assumes it will work when needed. By 4 a.m., fatigue is a factor. Not incapacitating, the workers here are experienced, but concentration requires more effort at this hour. The depot knows this. The shift structure reflects it. Mandatory breaks are spaced through the night. The most demanding tasks, coupling, point inspection, load assessment, are not assigned to the final hour before handover. System design accounts for human limits. This is not sentimentality. This is operational risk management. The arrival of an inbound train requires its own set of operations. The consist is received on the arrival road. A shunter walks the length of it, checking wagon numbers against the manifest. The paperwork is verified. The wagons are then sorted. Some go to immediate offload. Some go to the classification yard for the next outbound consist. Some go to the maintenance pit. The train that arrived is already being disassembled before the locomotive has cooled. The classification process uses a gravity hump in some larger yards, a small raised section of track over which wagons roll under their own momentum, directed by remotely controlled points to their designated siding. This depot uses electric shunters instead. Smaller scale. Same logic. Each wagon finds its place in the system. No wagon is simply left. Every wagon has a next step. At 4:45 a.m., the sky begins to differentiate. Not light yet, but the absolute black begins to gray. The night team registers this without acknowledging it. They have seen it hundreds of times. It means the handover is 90 minutes away. Notes are being prepared. Anything unresolved? A flagged wagon, a delayed consist, a maintenance deferral, gets documented. The incoming day shift will not start blind. That is the unspoken rule of every handover. The loading dock for fragile goods requires a different kind of attention. Vibration dampening pads under each pallet. A lower travel speed notation on the manifest, flagged to the network. Careful placement away from wagon end walls. The goods are high-value audio equipment. Somewhere, a concert hall ordered these in September. They have moved through 4 logistics systems to arrive here. They will travel 180 more kilometers tonight. No one in this depot knows where they are ultimately going. They just load them correctly. Water, temperature, weight, electricity, paper. The depot runs on all 5 simultaneously. It does not run on any one of them alone. Remove the paperwork. Nothing can be legally dispatched. Remove the electricity. Points freeze, signals fail, lights go out. Remove the maintenance. Safety margins erode. Remove the people. The system has no response to exceptions. Each layer depends on the others. This is infrastructure as organism. Layered. Interdependent. Continuous. The third outbound train of the night departs at 5:03 a.m. It is 11 minutes behind the original schedule. In the context of a freight rail network, 11 minutes is recoverable. At the next priority signal, at a passing loop, by adjusting the intermediate stop time. It is not a failure. It is the system operating within its tolerance band. The yard controller logs the departure. He does not write delayed. He writes the actual time. That is the record. At 5:30 a.m., the day shift arrives. 8 workers parking in the same spaces they parked in yesterday. The yard controller prepares the handover pack. Printed, stapled, ordered. Departures completed. Arrivals received. Maintenance outstanding. Incidents. None. Delayed. Consist. Reason documented. The summary is 2 pages long. It represents 11 hours of continuous operation. The incoming shift reads it before touching anything. 3 minutes of reading. Hours of consequence. The departing night team walks to the car park. They do not look back at the yard. They know it is fine. They made it fine. The supervisor, 11 years on nights, drives home as the light builds. He will sleep from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. He will return tonight. He has never once thought of this as extraordinary. He thinks of it as the job, which is perhaps the most extraordinary thing about it. By 6:15 a.m., the depot is in full day mode. Forklifts, daylight, new operators. The overnight consists have cleared the network. The refrigerated wagon is already at its destination. The automotive parts reached the factory at 5:51 a.m. 9 minutes early. The high-value audio equipment is still moving. The furniture wagons will be sorted at the receiving depot in 2 hours. The system does not announce completion. It simply continues. The cargo that moved through this yard tonight will become products on a shelf, materials in a building, parts in a machine that someone will rely on. Most of the people who use those things will never think about how they arrived. They will not know about the brake test at midnight, the weight check at the gate, the maintenance pit at 2 a.m. They don't need to. That is what the system is for. A freight railway depot is not a terminal. It is a node. Cargo enters from one direction and exits in 4 different directions: toward ports, toward factories, toward distribution hubs, toward other depots. Each node is dependent on the nodes before and after it. A delay here sends a signal forward. An efficiency gain here accelerates everything downstream. The network is not a line. It is a web. And this place is one of its junctions. What keeps a freight depot functional is not the technology. The technology enables. It does not operate. It is the judgment of the people who work here. The shunter who noticed the ballast in the blade gap, the technician who caught the marginal wheel profile, the controller who recalculated the sequence in 3 minutes. Each of those decisions prevented something. Nothing dramatic happened here tonight. That is the measure of a well-run system. Uneventful by design. The lights in the administration block switch off at 6:30 a.m. Last one out. The night team's clock-out cards sit in the rack. Their shift is logged, their hours recorded, their work complete. Somewhere in the country, their work is still moving. On a track, in a transit siding, arriving at a factory gate. The depot returns to ordinary appearance. Concrete, rails, parked wagons. It looks unremarkable from the road. Most things that matter do. The system does not ask to be noticed. It does not announce what it moved tonight. It simply resets for the next train, the next manifest, the next shift. This is how most of the world's essential infrastructure operates. Quietly, continuously, without applause. If you found yourself curious about what happens behind the systems that keep ordinary life running, you are not alone. That curiosity is why this channel exists. Under this video, there's a subscribe button. It's a small action, but it helps reveal the systems most people never notice. If you're curious about how everyday life actually functions, consider subscribing. And tell us, where are you watching from? Have you ever worked behind the scenes of a system like this?